Hey you, Nina here. You are officially listening to Triggered. Can we play with that wherever you get your podcasts? Now, we are trying a new format today. If you are watching us on YouTube, we got us a blurred background. I'm hoping that it works just fine for you. If not, let me know in the comments. If you are listening in the podcast, hello, hello, hello. You know that we're on season 3. You've been following along with us. And today we're bringing you something real special. So a lot of people struggle with ruptures in relationships. Raise your hand if you're a person that has struggled recently or in the past with a rupture in your relationship. Now, if you've been listening to Triggered, Can We Play With That? And you've heard us speak on ruptures, you know that it is a paired process. That rupture can come with repair. Okay, so that is what I mean by a paired process. There are 2 parts to it. Ruptures are going to happen. Let me repeat that. Ruptures are going to happen in your relationships, but repair is optional. And if you are like, yes, Nina, I want to salvage my relationship with XYZ, ABC, 1, 2, 3, fantastic. I want to offer you some words of wisdom, some psychoeducation, and some stories regarding this as a trigger, because what we're really going to be exploring today is what happens when you cannot be given closure by someone else, or when you cannot give yourself closure. Okay, that is what we're going to be talking about. If you've had a rupture in your relationship and you want to know how can you repair it so you're not holding on to the rupture, this episode is for you. Okay, now we're not going to be able to cover everything that there would be when it comes to being triggered by not getting closure. Okay, but we are going to be covering at least one facet. So get a journal on hand or a really good friend to dialogue with what comes up for you in this episode, because I guarantee you, if you're listening in, you have experienced a rupture. I want to know if you have gone for the repair, and if someone is not willing to offer you that repair, are you triggered by the lack of closure? Let's talk about it, because I am curious. Are you ready to play?
Welcome to Triggered. Can we play with that? You know that moment when your emotions ramp up in an instant, leaving you feeling helpless, frozen, or out of control? In that moment, you've been emotionally hijacked, the very definition of triggered. And I want to ask you, can we play with that? I'm Nina L. Garcia, drama therapist and empowerment coach of Houston Creative Arts Therapy. Join me as we discover ways to empower you and the people who mean the most to you to transform hard conversations into teachable moments. Triggered. Real playful. Real respectful. Real empowered.
Let's take a breath. Oh yeah, really get into the breath. You all really get into the breath. That is the first skill when we are thinking about triggered. If you do not know how your relationship is with your breath, now is a fantastic time to explore that. But we digress. Today, we're going to be exploring being triggered by a lack of closure. And here's what I mean by that. If you listen to the intro, you already know that rupture is inevitable in relationships. We're going to have ruptures. We're going to have small ruptures. We're going to have big ruptures. We're going to have medium ruptures and everything all in between, right? You cannot get away with not having a rupture in the world as we know it to be, okay? So ruptures are going to happen. Repair is optional. Now, this is really nice because it gives us some freedom, right? If I have a rupture with someone that leaves me irreparably damaged, right? Maybe my body might be damaged in this rupture. Maybe my mind might need some psychotherapy, right? Or even my emotional self might need some medication to help me balance. Whatever the case is, if I have a rupture with someone, I can choose to say, you know what? I don't want to repair this with you. You have been detrimental to my life, and I feel no obligation to repair this with you. And in fact, I'm choosing not to repair this with you. You can choose that, right? In the same way that we can say, you know what? I've had a rupture with you. It wasn't beneficial to me, and it's not going to be beneficial to me to repair this. In the same way that we say that, we can see the flip side of that. You know what? I've had a rupture with you. whether it's you who caused the rupture, quote unquote, or me who caused the rupture, quote unquote, right? Regardless of who caused the rupture, there has been a rupture in our relationship. And you know what? I'd like us to repair it. I'd like us to choose to repair it, right? I don't want you to feel obligated to repair it. I want to know that you want this relationship and you get to make that choice, right? There's a lot of choice in being able to repair. It's totally up to you whether you want to invest in the time and the energy and the mindset that it takes, right, to actually make that repair so that relationship can either continue on as healthy as it was, quote unquote, or so that it can actually get better than it has been. Yes, there's a lot of value in a really effective repair. So, if you haven't already, you should be journaling on ruptures are inevitable. That repair is an option, and it's an option in either way, right? You can totally repair with somebody who's done you harm. You can choose not to. You can repair when you've done harm, and you can choose not to. In the same way that you have a choice, my friend, they also have a choice. Yeah, they also have a choice. That other person will be able to choose whether they want to make the repair or not. And all that, my friends, is where this episode is really going to hone in. Are you ready? Are you ready? Because listen, I love talking about giving yourself closure. Write that down. Giving yourself closure. Because here's the thing. Let's say Susie Bob Joe has done you some harm. Susie Bob Joe, whether they meant to do you harm or didn't mean to do you harm, the impact on you was harm. And you're like, you know what, Susie Bob Joe? I have had a rupture with you. You know what? I want to repair it with you. And then Susie Bob Joe looks at you and says, I don't really have the time for you. I don't really have the energy for you. I don't want to deal with this at all. I'd rather avoid this, not deal with it, throw it away. This relationship isn't worth healing to me. I don't want to make this repair. And then you're left standing, sitting, however you were, reaching out to Susie Bob Joe saying, wait a minute, I wanted to make this repair. Don't you want this repair with me? Don't you? And they're walking away. That's it, right? For whatever reason, they have decided they don't want the repair. And now you're left with that rupture open, right? It hasn't been closed. You may feel like you don't know how to close it. You may feel like it's not your responsibility to close it, that it was Susie Bob Joe's. Let me tell you, my friend, regardless of who or what caused the rupture, regardless of whether they want to offer you repair and thus closure to that, that rupture cycle there that could be beginning of the rupture and then it just echoes out, right? Regardless of those things, you always have the option to give yourself closure and repair with yourself. Okay, this is the part I'm really excited about because here's why. Psychoeducation moment. A lot of people think that you have to get closure from the other person, right? That you have to get closure from somebody else who's done you harm in order for you to forgive them, in order for you to move on, in order for you to grow. And let me tell you what the danger is in this, okay? The risk and the danger in believing that somebody else has your healing and reparation in their hands is that they may not want to. In fact, here's the next level up. They may want to, not know how to. Here's the next level up, regardless of whether they want to or don't know how to, they might, heaven forbid in some cases, be gone off the face of this earth tomorrow and not have had enough time to repair with you. We cannot leave our reparation and our healing and expect, right? We cannot leave it in someone else's hands and expect that they will be able to offer that to us so that we can find closure. It would be irresponsible of us to put that in someone else's hands. And I hope that you are starting to see why. When we think of ruptures in relationship, we often think of, well, there's me, myself, and I, right? And then there's the other. So if I and this other person have had a rupture, we need to find the repair. We need to find closure. When instead, what I want to invite you to think about for today's episode and for the skill that I'm offering you today, I recognize there's a lot of nuance for different relationships and ruptures out there, but the skill I want to offer you today offers you the freedom to give closure to yourself, okay? Instead of thinking about this rupture in the relationship between you and this other person, I actually want you to hone in and think about what has been the rupture between me and myself in this moment. Whatever this rupture was between you and someone else, I want you to take that moment. Here it is. And I want you to think, well, gee willikers whiskers, what is it between me and myself that has been ruptured here? Is it that I feel like I can't trust myself now? Is it that I feel like I can't trust other people now, that I can't relieve myself of that, right? That I can't put that in someone else's hands? Is that what's happening now? Do I feel like I'm not deserving of love if I can't get closure in this? That I feel like I can never be forgiven if I can't be given closure on this, right? I want you to start to think about whatever that rupture is. I know this is my third time saying it. I hope you're writing it down. What is the rupture within that relationship? How does it relate to you and your relationship to yourself? You can give yourself the gift of closure when you begin to recognize what it is that is actually sitting in you. For you to say, for example, this is such a popular one. If you have ever heard yourself say, I can't forgive them for what they did, Nina. And have you heard the quote that that is like you drinking poison and expecting it to affect them? If you are not willing to forgive someone else for what they've done, that forgiveness, that lack of forgiveness that is held within you, that's not for them. That's being held within you. It's like a cage of your own design. If you are willing to hold on to no forgiveness, that's you holding on to that in your body. And let me tell you right now, you don't deserve that. What a weight that is. And it's not. When we think about forgiveness, and I recognize there's a lot more to this, and you can always reach out to me after, forgiveness is not for other people. It is for you. Now, if somebody else comes to you and asks for forgiveness right now, they may be trying to make a repair, but that's not actually what this episode is about. Again, I want you to think about you and your relationship to yourself in the most recent rupture that's happened. So we're going to move into flipping the script, and I want to offer you the official tool. If you haven't caught on in the process that we're doing already, now's your time to break out the journal and get this written down. First, what is a recent rupture that you have had? Recognize the rupture, write it down. Okay, between you and who else, some group, person, whatever is happening there, what was the rupture? Okay. Step 2, then I want you to own what is happening within you when it comes to this rupture. Is it a lack of forgiveness? Is it a lack of trust, a lack of love, a lack of belief, a lack of faith? What is it that's happening for you that your body is holding onto? That's very, very important, okay? You have to own your truth. When we think about, I don't want to give somebody else the responsibility for my closure because I deserve it sooner rather than later. I deserve it on my terms, in my time, not when someone else is willing and or able or has the capacity to give it to me. I need to be able to heal so that I can do better in the world, because a healed person does everyone better. Again, going back to those steps. Step 1, recognize the rupture between you and someone else. Step 2, recognize what your body's holding on to when it comes to that rupture, okay? Step 3, how do I give myself closure? Identify, what would I need in order to feel closure on this? Do I need to learn how to forgive this idea? Do I need to learn how to trust again? Do I need to learn how to believe? What is it that I need that is presently missing? That, a part of me was waiting, Nina. It was waiting for somebody else to give me. But now that I've listened to this episode, I realize I don't want to wait. I'm worth more, and I matter. You matter. What you do matters. How you show up for yourself and other people, it matters. So when you use this 3-step process and you ask yourself, how can you give yourself the gift of closure? This is how it starts, my friend. This is how it starts. And if you're looking for that bonus out there, you're like, Nina, I'm doing this. I want to do this. I want this thing. What can I do to challenge myself this upcoming week? Not only do I want you to do these 3 simple quote unquote steps, right? I want you to do the personal work to dive a little deeper, to give yourself the gift of closure. But the bonus that I would offer you for these steps is I then want you to share that externally with yourself and maybe with someone you trust. And what I mean by that is when you share that externally, I don't just want you to think about it. I don't just want to have journaled about it. Write a letter to yourself. Put it on your mirror. You can just write a mantra on your mirror about what this is that you're committing to yourself. Again, to give yourself the gift of closure. Don't just think about it. Be it. Do it. Put it into action. Yes, this is the work. So take a breath in. Today's episode has been all about giving yourself the gift of closure and really liberating yourself from the idea that you have to depend on somebody else to give you closure in something. You don't need to. It may even be dangerous or risky for you to put that expectation on someone else because they may not want to, they may not have the capacity to, or here's the reality, sometimes they're just not going to be on this earth long enough to even give themselves that opportunity. And we don't have any control over things beyond ourselves. So I hope you have written down what you need to. I hope you have a friend in mind to talk about how do you give yourself the gift of closure? How can they give themselves the gift of closure? And as we are moving toward the end of this episode and talking specifically about how do you liberate yourself from expectation, from obligation, how do you liberate yourself from expecting somebody else to show up for you in a certain way when maybe they can't, right? We have a liberatory workshop, a liberatory mindset workshop on September 23rd. It is a Friday at 10 a.m. You can head to the show notes. You can head to my link in Instagram at Drama Therapist Nina, and you can RSVP to that for free. It's a free workshop. We're going to talk about liberatory mindset. I'm going to offer you a really easy tool to be able to use. And then I'm going to actually leave space for you to come with your questions, whatever that question may be, and we can really work through it so that you are moving forward, feeling freer, feeling less triggered, and more in control of what you can control. Okay, so that is what I planned for you today, folks. Thank you so much for listening and exploring your triggers. If this episode was helpful for you, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. Please share the episode. Share the episode with someone else who you think can benefit from giving themselves the gift of closure. Okay. That is what I planned for you. That's all I'm going to say. Share the episode. Thank you so much for listening. And otherwise, stay curious.